Good afternoon. I'm Kira Bailey, Assistant Professor in Psychology and Neuroscience and co-director of the COVID-19 course along with Dr. Francesca Nestor in Politics and Government. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge that many universities and academic institutions across the U.S. and the world are taking time out from business as usual today to acknowledge the lack of diversity in our academic institutions and the ways that systemic bias specifically hurts Black academics and Black STEM professionals. Many groups across our campus, including the Summer Science Research Program, have met and discussed plans for playing our part in eradicating anti-Black racism in academia and STEM. We have not canceled this class today because we feel it also serves an important purpose for our community, but Dr. Nestor and I encourage you to learn more about the steps being taken across academia by following #ShutdownAcademia, #ShutdownSTEM, and #StrikeForBlackLives on social media. We also encourage you to hold yourselves and the institutions you're a part of accountable for not only saying that we are against racism, but for taking steps to be anti-racist. Now it's my pleasure to welcome you to the 14th lecture in our series. Today we will learn from Emily Hanafin. Emily is an experienced yoga teacher with her 200-hour level training and has been teaching since 2011. She teaches various styles of yoga, including Hatha, Vinyasa, Yin, and Restorative, and has been lead teacher in various 200-hour teacher trainings. Since 2016, Emily has taught yoga for the Health and Human Kinetics Department at Ohio Wesleyan. She enjoys sharing the practice of yoga with people of any age, but mostly to those who are willing to truly be in the experience they are having on their yoga mat. Over the past year, she has been practicing and studying Katana Yoga, which is a Hatha-based practice and syncretic method that incorporates the theories of Taoism, sacred geometry, and Chinese medicine. The theories and practices of Katana Yoga act as a lens by which to view the world, your experiences, and yourself. Currently, she's working towards her 200-hour certification in Katana Yoga. As a reminder, you can use the chat function to ask questions throughout the presentation. I will select questions for Emily to answer if time permits. You can also continue your discussions on the COVID-19 course Facebook group. And now, simple practices for stress relief.
All right, so welcome everyone. I'm so happy that you're here today and joining me for this afternoon. And so just a quick little rundown of what we're going to be talking about. We're going to go over the nervous system and the endocrine system and how they work together. And then we're going to talk a little bit more specifically about some parts of the nervous system. And after that, we're going to go over some very simple breathing practices and a couple, I don't think we will actually be doing physical poses, but I will tell you what they are. But first, what I want you to do is we're gonna put a really simple practice to work right now. So what I would like for you to do is I want you to sit at the edge of your chair. So especially if you're in like an office chair, like a swivel chair, or if you're sitting in a really squishy, soft piece of furniture, maybe you want to go down and sit on the floor. But if you're in like an office chair, what I want you to do is scooch to the very edge of the chair so that your sitting bones are supported at the edge of the chair. And then with your legs, you want to have your feet directly underneath you. So you want to think that your heels, you want 90 degrees. So 90 from the shoulders to the hips, and then hips out to the knees, knees down to the ankles, ankles out to the toes, right? It's all 90, 90, 90, okay? So go ahead and sit so you feel like your joints are stacked, one on top of the other. And then I want you to place your palms, your hands, palms face down on top of your thighs, and then close your eyes. And just take a moment. So take a moment to drop in. Bring your awareness, take it all the way from the very top of your head or wherever you are sensing and feeling your awareness, like your attention is right at this moment. and drop it all the way down to the very base of your spine, which you should feel like you are sitting right on that spot. Whatever you're sitting on is supporting you from underneath, right? So it's by way of being supported from whatever's below us, the earth, the chair, that we can receive, you know, understanding and grace from the universe, right? Which is above us. So take a moment and drop in. And as you're dropping in, think that you are designed to fit yourself. You're not designed to fit anybody else but you. So feel how your palms fit on your thighs. Feel how your eyes fit perfectly into your eye sockets. Your tongue fits in the roof of the mouth. And take one more moment to just notice. Notice anything physical, or maybe, you know, take something that feels seemingly external from whatever experience you're having right now, this moment, and then turn it inward. Is there anything happening internally? Just noticing, no judging. And I want you to take a nice full deep breath in through your nose, through both nostrils. Breathe in. And then exhale all the air out. You can even open your mouth if you want. You can sigh it out or just breathe out through both nostrils. Let it go. We're going to do that 2 more times. Inhale to fill all the way up from the base of the spine up through the crown of the head. Exhale, crown of the head down to the base of the spine. 1 more. Inhale. And exhale. When you feel ready, you can open your eyes, start to slowly open your eyes. And if you have notes or something by you and you want to jot down whatever came up, or anything physical, anything explicit, anything implicit, right? Like anything from the external to the internal, jot it down, or just take a mental note of the experience that you just had. So that was really easy, right? Yeah. So these practices for stress relief are that simple, right? So you have to remember that the breath is a bridge between the body and the mind. It's literally the connector. You know, the breath is natural, but it can be trained. Like the way you naturally breathe, you can train yourself to breathe in ways to elicit a calming stress, you know, or to have no stress response, right? You can train your body, you can train your breath to have that effect on your nervous system in your physical body. It's really incredible. We have the power, right? And a trained breath stabilizes the nervous system and then powers the movement of the mind and the body, right? So I'm just going to share with you one more little quote. I love this quote, and I want you to think of it. You can write it down. It's from Naveen Mashan, who is the founder. It's actually Katona Yoga. I should have said that. I should have made that more apparent. But anyway, it's from Katona Yoga. It's from Naveen Mashan, who is kind of like, she kind of started this whole thing. And it goes, anywhere the breath goes, the mind can follow. Anywhere the mind goes, the breath can access. Anywhere the breath goes, the mind can follow. Anywhere the mind goes, the breath can access. So remember that. It's powerful. We are really powerful, right? So let's talk about the nervous system. And I know you touched briefly on it yesterday, but the nervous system is incredible. Our bodies are incredible. They do all these functions, and all of our systems run without us having to control everything. right? Our heart beats on its own. I'm moving my hands around and I don't have to tell my hands to move around. I'm just flapping them around, right? You know, our digestion, right? That whole process. And along with that, like it's tied in so closely with our nervous system. So, you know, our bodies are super complex and it's just really amazing to think of all the things that they do, right? But two of the most complex and interesting systems that we're going to go over are the nervous system and the endocrine system. So they must function together for our stress response and our rest response to happen. If they don't function properly together, then things can get out of whack. And so when we talk about the nervous system, I'm gonna try to break it down pretty simply for you. So when you have the nervous system, you have the central nervous system, which is your brain and your spinal cord. So think central, center, middle, right? Brain and spinal cord. That's what we were breathing up and down, right? We were inhaling and exhaling up that center line in the body, which we talk about a lot if you've ever taken a yoga class or maybe done any other kind of meditation. That's what we talk about, that center line in the body a lot. Now you also have the peripheral nervous system. So think peripheral on the periphery. So it's like on the outskirts, it's branches off the central nervous system and goes into the arms, into the legs, down through the pelvis, all throughout the rest of the body. So your peripheral nervous system is your cranial and spinal nerves. It is your reflexes and your receptors in your arms and your legs. Now, we're going to keep digging deeper. So a division of the peripheral nervous system is the autonomic nervous system. Okay, so think autonomic, automatic. The autonomic nervous system is also involuntary. So it just works on its own. All the things we were talking about, right? Like the heart pumping, our lungs, filling up, and, inflating and deflating, all of that, autonomic nervous system. Now, under the branch of the autonomic nervous system, you have the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system, or systems, I should say, okay? So sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems are always working together. They're always on, all the time. Your body is always working for homeostasis, for balance between the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous systems, okay? So now pause there. We're gonna pick back up there in a moment, but pause at sympathetic and parasympathetic, okay? So we're gonna switch for a moment and talk about the endocrine system. So the endocrine system, it's in charge of secreting hormones for various functions in the body. It's in charge of a lot, right? So like you have your thyroid, which controls your metabolism, and I believe also your body temperature. You've got your pituitary gland, which is located in the center. It's like below the brain in the center of the head. Think of it being in the center of the head. And also the thymus, which is right here in the center of your chest, like at your sternum, which are responsible for growth and development. You have your ovaries and your testes for, sexual function and reproduction. You have your adrenals, which sit above your kidneys. They each sit right on top of your kidneys, and those are responsible for your heart rate. And because they're responsible for your heart rate, they're also responsible for blood pressure, also stress response. Think adrenals, adrenaline, right? They release the adrenaline, and they also release cortisol, the stress hormone. Then you've got your pancreas and your hypothalamus, which pancreas is in charge of appetite, and along with the hypothalamus is in charge of blood sugar. You have your pineal gland, also along with your hypothalamus, in charge of your sleep and wake cycles. Hypothalamus, and I believe along with the thyroid, body temperature, are in charge of body temperature, and then parathyroid controls your calcium levels. So a lot, right? A lot goes on in that endocrine system that it's in charge of. Now, like I said before, your nervous system and endocrine system must function together. So your hypothalamus in the brain works in conjunction with the pituitary gland. They work together, very close relationship. in very basic terms, the hypothalamus tells the pituitary gland what, what to tell all the other glands. So even though the pituitary gland is the smallest, so pituitary, P, it's very, very small. It's the size of a pea. It sits in the middle of your head. The pituitary gland is in charge of all the other glands. So remember that. And we're going to come back to our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. Okay? So your sympathetic nervous system, like I said, remember they toggle. They're always working for homeostasis. They're always working for balance. Your sympathetic nervous system are all of these things. Okay? Sympathetic, this is going to look like your left, but it's my right. Okay? So this is going to keep me on track. I'm not going to mirror because then I'll get confused. So sympathetic nervous system. Every time you inhale, that's sympathetic nervous system. You are inhaling energy. You're inhaling what we call in the world of yoga prana, which is not just air, it's life force energy. It is not just oxygen. You're inhaling space dust. You're inhaling minerals. You're inhaling all kinds of things. You're bringing it into your body. It is life force energy. So the inhale, sympathetic. Also think of it's the right side of the body. Also in yoga, the right side of the body signifies the masculine. It's heating, it's energizing, it's the sun, it's the accelerator. It's putting your foot on the gas. That's sympathetic, okay? The other thing that the sympathetic nervous system does is when you have a stress response, when something happens, you get into a car accident, you get into an emergency situation, maybe you get into an argument, a heated discussion. Haven't been many of those lately, I'm sure, right? So you get into a heated discussion and it might activate your flight, fight, or freeze response. That's your sympathetic nervous system. So what happens really, really fast is that that's activated. Your hypothalamus tells your pituitary gland to tell the adrenals to send cortisol and adrenaline into the bloodstream. And boom, it happens. And then what happens? You're either flight, you either feel like you have to run, get out of there, move, leave the scene. You want to fight back, or you freeze. You choke up, right? You can't find the words, you freeze, your muscles are locked up. So that's your sympathetic nervous system. Okay, parasympathetic nervous system. It's the opposite. It is the exhale. When you exhale, it's called apana. It's downward, energy going down instead of energy coming up. You're exhaling the outgoing waste. Okay, it's the left side of the body. It's cooling. It's the moon. It's the feminine. It's the side of the emotions. It's the rest and digest function. It's the brake, putting on the brakes, pumping the brakes. That's activating your parasympathetic nervous system. Now, another really important piece of the parasympathetic nervous system is that every time you exhale, you activate your vagus nerve. Okay, so the vagus nerve, again, this is part of the activating the parasympathetic nervous system. The vagus nerve is the 10th cranial nerve, and it connects to, I'm going to mention it and you'll understand why. It connects to 8 major organs, 4 above the diaphragm and 4 below the diaphragm. So it connects to above the diaphragm, the larynx, the pharynx, the heart, and the lungs, also the facial muscles, the inner ear. And then below the diaphragm, it connects to the stomach, the pancreas, the liver, the spleen, and the intestines. That's a lot. Now, vagal, what we call you might have heard this mentioned before if you're a student of yoga or pranayama, breathing exercises or meditation. A lot of yoga teachers will talk about the vagus nerve or vagal tone. So vagal tone is regulated by heart rate variability, which we're going to do a little bit of that, a little bit of resonance breathing in a moment. But basically, every time you exhale, It slows down the heart by activating the vagal brake, right? So every time you exhale, you activate that vagus nerve that is in contact with all of those parts of your body, from your head all the way down through your intestines. Pretty amazing. So high vagal tone is associated with really good cardiovascular health, a strong immune system, positive emotions, positive social interactions, which you hopefully learned about yesterday, and how to keep that happening, and balanced emotions. Low vagal tone can be an indicator of higher levels of inflammation in the body and inflammatory diseases. Epilepsy, digestive disorders, and higher levels of anxiety and depression. So we want to really have a nice high vagal tone in our bodies, right? So we can experience positive emotions, so we can get a handle on ourselves, get a good handle on our emotions. You know, again, every time you take that exhale, you're toning the vagus nerve. Now, like I said, remember that we're always toggling. Every time you inhale, sympathetic nervous system activated. Every time you exhale, parasympathetic nervous system activated. So the beauty of this, and what hopefully you maybe got a taste of or you've experienced before, is that we have the ability to regulate our nervous system with our breath, right? There are these exercises we're going to go over. These can be done every single day. They don't take a lot of time. You can do them first thing in the morning. You can do them right before you go to bed. They're wonderful for regulating the heart rate. So, but before we get into specific breathing practices, I'm just going to talk about some other kind of daily practices or daily routines to incorporate into your day to promote some and maybe help you along with some stress relief. So if you looked at any of the articles or the readings that I sent out that were sent out to all of you, one in particular I found really interesting was by Dr. Lori Santos, who is a professor at Yale. She teaches a class on happiness, and it was actually offered, I believe, in April online because it was so popular. But anyway, some of this comes from her, but a lot of this is coming from me and like my own personal practices. So I'm going to share this with you because I have found this to be helpful for me. And so I also want to remind you, and this is kind of gets into a little bit of Katona yoga theory, but if you want one thing, you got to do everything, right? So it's never, whenever you think like, oh, I'm working too much or whatever, it's never just that. It's always everything else, right? Or like, oh, I hurt my shoulder. It's never just your shoulder. It's everything. It's the whole entire body, right? Because your whole body starts to compensate. So keep these little things in mind. If you want one thing, do everything, never just one thing. Know where you go too much. Know where you don't go enough. Know what you need more of. Know what you need less of. Okay, so, and you know, these are just suggestions. These are also, and as we get more into the pranayama piece, these are recipes. They're techniques, they're recipes for you. And you over time can start to, as you hone your technique and become really, really well versed in it, you can start to really make it your own and make it work for you. That's the other cool thing, is like, you don't have to stick to the script 100%. Okay, so some simple practices, simple external practices. Journaling. Journaling. I know some people are like, ooh, I don't like to write, or oh, it seems so corny. Think of journaling as, and this is the way that I think of it, I get up pretty much every morning, I get my glass of water and I go sit down and I put pen to paper. So sometimes I set a timer, sometimes I say I'm going to write X amount of pages, but putting pen to paper and physically writing things out is a way for you to get rid of excess energy. Think of it as clearing the space up here so that you can be ready and prepared for what you have the rest of the day. You can do it in the morning, you can do it at night. before you go to bed, unresolved things, things you didn't get to, things that could cause you stress, right? Get it out. So you clear the mental space. So you're giving yourself more space to actually function at a better capacity, to be able to become present when you don't have all this other stuff floating around in your head. Okay, so journaling. 2, physical movement. Move your body. Your body is designed to move in all the ways. Remember, it's never just one thing, it's all the things. So we used to move 16 hours a day. When's the last time you moved 16 hours a day? Probably, I don't know, over this whole quarantine situation, I know I was sitting a lot, right? So we now sit about the same amount. It's so, yeah, it's so, figure out how to move your body. If you work in an office, if you're stuck in a chair, get up and walk around. Walk around your desk, walk down the hall, come right back. You can be on a phone call and walk around. So move your body in all the ways. Social interaction, right? Super important, as I'm sure you learned more of how to get some of that in this, as we're still trying to be safe, right? But you can still be virtually connected. You can look someone in the eyes, you know, setting up daily, weekly, monthly check-ins on your phone. Or I know I've been with my college friends and roommates. We've been having a monthly Google Hangout, and it's been the best thing for my soul is to connect with my people, right? Being of service to others, that's huge. Now you might think, well, I can't get out and you know, work. If you were volunteering at a center or at a soup kitchen or at all the things, maybe that's not possible right now, but guess what? You can still be of service to others. You can help out your neighbor. Maybe they need groceries. You can help out an older relative or a friend. There's ways that you can be of service to others, and that can help quell some of that stress. Feeling like you have a purpose. Right? We all have a purpose. Some of us have found it. Some of us are still working towards it. Some of us think we know what it is, right? But feeling like you have a purpose and that you're important can also help those stressful feelings. And then the last one, having a daily pranayama practice. Yes, having a daily breathing practice for balance. So let's get into our practice. So the first one we're going to do is the resonance breathing, which I mentioned when we were talking about the activation of the vagal brake via the exhalation and the heart rate variability. So resonance breathing, you're bringing harmony between the inhale and the exhale. So it's literally bringing harmony to the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. Balance, homeostasis. This is the goal, right? So when you do this, now, and the beauty of this is that you can do it anytime, anywhere. You can do it if you're having that heated conversation and the other person won't even know that you're doing it because you're just sitting quietly and breathing. Yeah. So this resonance breathing tones your vagus nerve. It shuts off your stress response. It activates relaxation. It can reduce abdominal pain. It supports healthy digestion, and it lowers your blood pressure. So it's super easy. A couple things to just note is that there is no right way to do this. There's no wrong way to do it. When you're first learning this, just think about your breath staying smooth. It doesn't have to be super deep. Go back to your normal breath if you start to feel anxious. If it is helpful to you, maybe put a hand over your belly, like over your stomach, and you want to feel your stomach expanding on the inhale and then deflating on the exhale. And just do this with keeping the goal of balancing the nervous system, right? It's not like you're not trying to become an expert breather or anything like that, okay? So you can do this also. The cool thing about this is that you can do it, like I said, anywhere, in any position. You can do it seated, you can do it standing, you can do it laying down, you can put your legs up the wall or over a piece of furniture. The world is your oyster. Make it your own, right? I'm giving you the recipe. You can take the recipe and tweak it to what you need. So what I want you to do is find your seat like we did at the very beginning. So if you need to scooch towards the edge of your chair, maybe shift a little left and right, feel like you are plugged in. Think that your pubic bone is in front of you, so send your pubic bone a little bit further forward, close your eyes. Maybe think of your tailbone being behind you and think that the very center of the base of your spine, the perineum, is plugged in below you. Rest your hands on your legs or put a hand over your belly. And what we're eventually doing is when you follow these breathing counts, so just keep your eyes closed and just let your breath move in and out at its normal rhythm, its normal rate. What we're doing is that we're slowing down our breathing rate to about 5 to 7 breaths per minute when we breathe like this. Also know that you usually have either the inhale is longer than the exhale or the exhale is longer than the inhale, and that's normal. It's typical that the inhale is longer than the exhale. But what we're going to try to do is even it out. So what I want you to start doing first is I want you to get to the bottom of your next exhale. So from wherever you are, get all the way to the bottom of your breath. And then you're going to inhale for 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 4, 3, 2, 1. I want you to keep doing that. Inhale for 4. Exhale for 4. Even out the inhale with the exhale. Just go at your own pace. You are in charge of the count. You're in control of counting. And just evening out, bringing balance to your nervous system. That's the goal. Now, I'll give you a variation. You don't have to do it. You can stick with 4 and 4, but if you want to try it, you're going to inhale for 4 and then exhale for 6 counts. So you extend the exhale just a little bit longer. And again, if you start to feel anxious, just come right back to your normal breathing. There's no right way to do it. Keep a hand on your belly if you find that that is helpful for you. If you're like, I don't like this 4-6 business, I'm going to stick with 4-4, stick with that. Do just 2 more rounds on your own. When you're finished, you can open your eyes, jot down anything that happened, or just notice, just notice how you feel. Notice anything that went on in your body, in your mind. Notice what happened. Did you start off, feeling a little more anxious or a little more enlivened? And now you're like, oh, I feel a little more calm. I feel a little more even. I feel a little more balanced. Okay, so easy, right? You are in control of the counts. You can do 4-4, you can do 4-6. As you get more proficient in your breath, you have the capacity to extend your exhales because it's pretty easy. We're very used to going and holding the breath, right? Like we do it when we swim, we do it when we get anxious or nervous or excited. but it's not so common to hold the exhale, right? So as you get more proficient at it, extend the count, okay? So that's how you make it your own. The second style of breath work, and the book that I mentioned, and where these specific breathing exercises came from for this specific reason, is from, it's a book called One Simple Thing, and it's by Eddie Stern. And if you are a student of yoga, or if you've never done any yoga ever, or breathing or meditation or anything, get this book. It's so good. It's really, really good. He does an incredible job combining science and yoga philosophy together. So you're like, oh, okay, like that's what's going on. So get that book. So this other style of breathing is single nostril breathing. Now remember, sympathetic, right side, heating, sun, energizing, warming, all of that. The accelerator, parasympathetic, left side, moon, feminine, cooling, calming, all that. This is exactly what we're doing. Now remember, when you toggle with the nostrils, you're gonna close one side and breathe only through one side. So the left nostril corresponds to the right brain, and the right nostril, my right, corresponds to the left side of the brain. So when you do this breathing exercise, and there is a study mentioned at the end of that book by Eddie Stern, that this proves that it brings your hemispheres, the hemispheres of your brain, into balance. That's what you're doing. That's all you're doing, is that you're bringing the brain into balance by doing this. So again, we have these two energies in our bodies at all times. We want to balance them out. So what you're going to do is, again, find your seat, sit up nice and tall. You can let the shoulders relax and close your eyes. And you're going to take the right hand, just take your right thumb and rest it over the right nostril. You can rest your index and middle fingers between your eyebrows, like at your third eye center, and then just let your other fingers float. So your right nostril is closed. You're going to inhale through, so your right is closed. You're going to inhale through the left nostril only. So take 3 breaths in and out just through the left side. They don't have to be deep, but just think of keeping the breath smooth. Or maybe you have time for 4. You can do 4. And when you're finished with that, you're going to go to the other side. So you can take your left hand, left thumb on left nostril, index and middle fingers, third eye, right nostril open, 3 to 4 breaths only in and out through the right side. When you're done, you can just keep your eyes closed, let your hands rest on your legs. Just take a moment. I want you to take an inhale. So think of that inhale. Again, it's going to start at the base of the spine this time. So we're just going to go through one more simple breath practice, one more simple pranayama. It's really easy to remember. And I like this one because it gives you direction. It gives you a place to go. And it's also the, in general, reminder that everything has a season, that nothing is permanent, nothing really truly lasts forever, right? So I want you to inhale, take the inhale from the base of the spine up the front side of the body. So we like to think of this as spring rising. So it's like new life, it's new, a bud shooting up from the mud, coming up out of the earth. So inhale all the way up to the top, hold the breath. As we hold the breath over the very top, over the crown of the head, it's like summer ripening. So think something ripens. something blossoms, the fruit ripens, and then exhale down your back. That's autumn. It's the leaves falling off the trees. It's the things that don't serve us falling away. And when you get to the bottom of the breath, you're going to hold the breath in. This is the stillness, the quiet, the insight of winter. So do it again. Inhale up the front side of the body as spring rises. Hold at the top for summer ripening. Exhale down your back for autumn. Empty pause at the bottom for winter. One more time, do it on your own. Inhale up the front. Hold at the top. Exhale down your back. Empty pause at the bottom. Let your breath return to normal. You can open your eyes. And that is everything that I have for you today. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Emily. I hope everyone's feeling a little more relaxed if you were following along with the breath practice. Remember, you can ask more questions in the chat if there's anything that you want to know. And I'll start off by asking about what are some of the long-term effects of doing these things consistently? Because we've kind of focused on the short term of dealing with stress in the immediate, but what kind of long-term benefits are there?
With the breathing practices specifically?
Breathing practices or yoga more generally. I'm really interested to know about all of it.
So, with the breathing practices specifically, I feel like what has happened for me, I feel like I'm in the driver's seat. Like I'm in control, right? So I think long-term practices, realizing that one, I can control my responses. We're only responsible for who? Ourselves. I know that seems really remedial and basic, but it really is that simple. So we're in charge of our reactions to things, right? Ultimately, that's the only thing we can control is our reactions, and the way or what I would like to say is the way you, instead of reacting, respond, right? How do you respond to a situation instead of react? I think you get a handle on your patterns and your habits, and you're able to be a better person for you, right? And be a better person for everybody around you. But the physical, I think, like health benefits, lower blood pressure, you can kind of, it depends with yoga, it's such a broad umbrella term. What I will speak to specifically is Katona yoga. Like I said, they're recipes. In Katona yoga, we focus a lot on, we like to think of asana, the physical practice, the physical postures, like you think of your warrior one or a triangle pose or a downward facing dog. We like to think of the physical postures as you think of origami folding for paper. When you do a physical posture, in Katona yoga, you think of it's like origami folding your body. And then when you can fold your body efficiently and you can fit yourself, literally fit yourself, like a fist into a palm, a knee into an armpit, a hand over an elbow. Your body fits brilliantly and intelligently on its own, because that's the way that the universe designed you, right? Like we're intelligently designed. So then it gets better from there. Like your functions just up level. You up level everything. So I don't know if I'm answering your question. There's a lot of really good long-term positive benefits.
Yeah, that's great. Okay. Did you want to add more? Or I
mean, I can go on, but I don't want to, if there's other questions, I don't
want to.
Yeah,
we do have a few more interesting questions. So one, we have one answer to over in the chat, but I'm going to go ahead and ask you as well. Can these techniques that you just ran us through, would those be helpful for someone experiencing like an acute anxiety episode, like say from middle of the night insomnia, like you wake up and you feel anxious? Would this be a good way to help with that?
Yeah, so the last exercise we did, the breath of the seasons, you've probably heard this kind of breathing. It's called box breathing. It's really similar to that. So what is really helpful to think of if you're having like some sort of, you know, like a really intense stress response, middle of the night or whenever it is you've got to bring yourself back to the moment, right? So like that's step one, is you've got to remember that breath is your bridge between your body and your mind, and you're in control, right? You are. So one is to recognize and be like, oh yeah, I'm in control. I can, you know, manipulate my breath so that my body responds in such a way that I want it to. So the box breathing is very similar to the breath of the seasons. Think box breathing. How many sides does a box have? 4. What you do is 4 counts. 4 in, just draw a box around yourself with your breath, and then fill up the box with your breath. But you just keep breathing in for 4 up the front, 4 goes over the top of the head, 4 down behind you, 4 comes out underneath you. So you draw a box with yourself around yourself, or a sphere. I like to think, you know, 3-dimensional, make it a cube, make it a sphere, but 4 counts. It's super easy. Breath of the seasons works for that too. But anything to bring you into your physical body, but the breath can be that. And the seasons are nice because you can just think like inhale spring, hold for summer. With the box breathing, you hold, right? But, and if 4 counts is too long, then you make it shorter.
Makes sense. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the maybe relative importance of the spiritual aspects of this, because I know some people use yoga without necessarily connecting to that spiritual aspect. And so I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to, you know, the importance of it, or what it maybe adds to the yoga practice.
Yeah, so, you know, yoga practice is personal, and it's also spiritual in nature, right? Like, you know, I do my own personal yoga practice because it helps me feel connected to my spirit and the spirit of the universe, right? Like, it's also a way to remember that you're connected to things that are outside of you and bigger than you. I think another piece to remember, or if it is helpful for you, you can certainly, you know, no matter what spirituality you are, or even if you're not, if you practice any certain religion, it certainly works in conjunction with the practices of yoga. They come together. If you're not very spiritually inclined and that's not really your thing, your imagination is a great tool. You know, that's why, you know, when also in Katona yoga, we use the aspect of imagination. It's like you get into a pose, so you manipulate your physical body, and then you're using the breath, and you're using those directions with the breath, with your imagination, right? So what was your question again? It was about spirituality. I got off track.
No, you're totally fine. You were answering it really well. Yeah, I was just for people who want to do it but don't necessarily have a connection to the spiritual aspect, I guess I'm basically wanting you to tell them that it's still a good thing to do.
Yes, absolutely. And, you know, it's by virtue of you using, like I said, like, you know, when you can get in that seat and plug in, you open yourself up to what's above you. meaning the universe, meaning, you know, what I like to say, and what we like to say in Katona Yoga is like, you know, you have your efforts, and then you also have grace. You have, you know, vigor and vigilance, and you have grace. So you have to have the two. And your imagination is a big piece of that. So even though if you're not spiritually inclined, or you don't follow a certain particular religion, your imagination is the next best thing. And that's what we like to do in this practice, and especially with breathing practices. Like, there are tons and tons and tons of different styles of pranayama. I mean, we just brushed the surface, but these are very calming, balancing ones. There are lots of other kinds of pranayama where you really do, you know, you get to use your imagination a lot. And that's kind of like the fun part, because then you put your own spin on it, right? You tweak your own recipe and make it your own, because it's personal.
Perfect. So a couple of people have asked for your advice on where to go to learn more of these breathing practices. Like, are there YouTube videos or any other resources? And then someone had also kind of added on to that and asked if there are different levels, like beginner level, intermediate. So is there a particular place that you should start?
So you can look up all kinds of, I mean, there's some of the practices, I think I saw some, I haven't really been following the chat, but I think I saw somebody mention Kundalini yoga. A lot of the breathing practices and pranayama that I do through Katona are from Kundalini yoga. That's like the cool thing about it. It's kind of like a combination of Hatha yoga, like I said, Taoism, it's sacred geometry, it's, you know, Chinese 5-element theory. And but to find breathing practices, yeah, look stuff up on YouTube. One teacher in particular that is a Katona teacher that I would suggest, actually I'll put it in the chat, because you won't get it if I just say her name, because her name is Daegis. Hold on. If you look her up, she runs workshops. Also, the Katona Yoga Center. It's called Katona after a small town in New York State. It's just outside of Westchester. So it's called Katona, which is where it started, which is why that's what it's called. You can also, if you're interested in it, here are a couple other names, a couple other people for you to look up. The Katona Yoga Center, actually, they do a couple, if you look on their Instagram page, or even like their Facebook page, or go to their website, they've got their online, that's like also the really amazing thing about right now, is like the world is your oyster for finding all these really amazing yoga teachers that you'd usually have to travel halfway across the world to take practice with. You can take practice with them any day of the week. It's amazing, for a nominal fee, $10. So anyway, you can go to these websites. I also teach this too. I'm here in Delaware. I'm currently teaching outside at Boardman Art Park right now. You guys know where that is. It's between William and Winter. I'm teaching outside there on Monday and Wednesday mornings at 9 a.m. On a day like today, when I thought it was going to rain, we're just doing Zoom instead. So, but even if you can't physically be there, you can still join in on Zoom. And we do breathing, and then we also do physical postures. But as far as there being like a beginner level, or like advanced or intermediate or anything like that, honestly, I would say you just come in as you are and you do it. Right? And like, you might feel like a little bit of a fish out of water when you start, but like I said, these are practices. They are meant to be done on the regular. They are daily recipes, right? For joy, for, for your own well-being. Yeah, so there's the people that I mentioned are definitely worth your time, worth looking up. There's a wealth of really great yoga teachers out there. There's also a lot of not so great yoga teachers out there as well. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing all of those resources. That's going to be super helpful. So I'm going to ask you one more question, and this one is a little bit of a funny question, I think, but I was wondering the same thing, and an audience member asked it, so I'm going to go for it. Do you have any idea why doing this sometimes makes you yawn more? And it's totally fine if you have no idea. Someone asked, and I was like, I wonder too.
I really have no idea. Maybe my stab would be that it's activating your parasympathetic nervous system, and so you're more prone to feel a little tired, and then you yawn. But isn't it true that like nobody really knows what a yawn is? Isn't it just like kind of a reflex?
Yeah, so I was, that's part of the reason why I was wondering. So I would probably back you up and say, yeah, probably parasympathetic related, but who really knows? Though interestingly, there is a study on yawning and social connection. So, I think there have been a lot of connections between what we talked about, Dr. DeLillo and I talked about on Monday, and what you've talked about today. So hopefully this week gave people a lot of really good advice. All right, so thank you so much, Emily, for sharing your time and your knowledge with us today. We really appreciate having you here. And thank you to everyone who joined us today and for all of the excellent questions. Don't forget that you can continue your conversations on the Facebook group. And another way to continue the conversations this week is the Meet the Prof sessions. So students who have registered for the course can join us tomorrow at 4 p.m. in Blackboard Collaborate, and community members can join us at noon on Friday in Blackboard Collaborate. And the RSVP links will be sent in an email. But as always, if you have any questions, just contact us at covidcoursecoordinator@owu.edu. We will see you all again soon.